Hey, it's Tuesday, January 29th. Yes, January 29th, 2019. And what does that mean? Well, that means that it's only a few days away before the February 1st deadline to get your short story first draft entered into the Cold Hard Type typewriter themed short story project that's been commissioned by Dr. Richard Polt. If you guys aren't familiar with this, go to the link that I'll leave down below in the description section. But this is a collection of stories crowdsourced from amongst the typewriter typosphere about a digital world collapse returning to the world of analog and typewriters. It is like future fiction, potentially science fiction or whatever, but it's a crowdsourced themed typewriter themed project. And I've been working furiously the last few days since Sunday working on my project. I've already submitted my initial first draft about a week and a half ago, and I've gotten good feedback from Dr. Polt and some of his colleagues. So I've been really working on getting the story polished up to the way it should be, and it was really invaluable having this kind of feedback because, of course, myself, along with maybe a lot of the other participants out there in this project, are not seasoned writers, certainly. So we're all amateurs, most of us. So you might be in the throes of trying to get those last minute changes done, or just getting that rough draft completed and sent to Dr. Polt before the February 1st deadline. And so I can definitely relate to you. And I wanted to encourage you guys, and I want to also give you a few little tips and pointers just kind of describing my personal workflow of what I was doing to kind of how I wrote this and edited it. Your workflow might be different. You might have your own methodology. That's perfectly fine. But hey, let me show you how I've been doing this. See if it helps you. Well, one of the first resources you should check out if you're interested in getting involved in cold hard type is if you go to the website link I'll leave below, there's a list of questions that Dr. Polt poses to us pertaining to the storyline. What happens to the digital world? Why can humans no longer use computers and the internet? How widespread or uniform is the digital collapse? How far along is it? Has the problem just occurred, etc.? So there's a lot of little tips here for kind of creating the backstory to the world that your story takes place in. And that is really the first thing that I did when I started this project. So I have a whole slew of documents pertaining to the backstory of my tale that I tell, and I wrote these over a period of time from December 2nd to December 23rd, 2018, a series of brainstorming sessions, and some of it was written on my thermal electronic typewriter. Others were typed up on traditional typewriters, but it was really important to figure out ahead of time what kind of world my story would take place in, because that kind of dictates how the story progresses, and it kind of dictates the behavior of the characters in the story, the rules of that society, if you will, and the history that they've faced and what they're heading toward in the future. And the next thing I did is, after I had a sufficient amount of the backstory for this fictional world created, I sat down, I waited kind of for a period of inspiration, and I sat down and this little vignette occurred to me. It was on December 24th, and it's just circled here on a piece of paper amidst a larger amount of writing I did. This was just a brainstorm typing session I was involved in, and it doesn't even involve the correct name of the character, or at least the name I'm using now, but I make a note below. It's an example of a possible beginning for the story, and sure enough, there's a lot of details in this paragraph that I ended up using in my story. And from there, I ended up going into a first draft written on my Smith Corona Skywriter, and it was just double-spaced. It wasn't formatted in the finished formatting that Dr. Polt requires. I went ahead and redline edited the draft with a red pen, and then typed a second draft on a different typewriter because I was experimenting also with different font sizes, right? So then I have the second draft, which also is redline edited, etc. And then I typed a third draft on my Facet 1620 in the older size formatting of 4 inches by 7 inches. And that was kind of getting closer to what I thought would be a finished storyline. At that point, I ended up transcribing that into the word processor file in the template size that Dr. Polt had sent us earlier. And I have a printout here of all those instructions on his website on how to format the thing. So then that resulted in a printout of what I thought was a pretty good draft. This ended up being my Rev 4, but it was my first draft submission to Dr. Polt in the size that it should have been, but it's actually printed on a laser printer just so I could get it in on time. And from there, of course, I had some really constructive feedback via email about all the changes that they thought necessary, some clarifications they thought were needed, and things like that. So a lot of grammar and punctuation and things like that, sentence structure things, from an amateur, non-educated writer here. But there was a lot of structural changes that I thought were necessary in my story in order to really bring it out, bring it up to the next level, and kind of deal with some of the issues that this critique pointed out. And one of the things that really helped me is I sat down with a fountain pen and a blank sheet of paper, and I did what you might call mind mapping. I kind of started with the main characters, and I started with a kind of a flow chart of the group, the underground group that they start, and all the people connected with them that you would have to have in that group, and then how it proceeds, how their transformation would proceed in the storyline and what would happen there as it goes down and proceeds. And this whole flowchart, this bubble map, it informed me for this major rewrite that I involved myself in this week. So the last, I don't know, since Sunday, I've been involved in pretty much doing nothing other than sitting down and writing, doing this big rewrite. And so that's been kind of fun. It's been a lot of work, but I basically took a printout of what I had sent Dr. Polt, and I started doing a lot of changes to it. Sometimes whole pages were scrapped, and then I would insert new typed sections, first draft kind of sections, in those sections of the story to try to totally kind of bring it up to where I thought it should have been. And now I got to the point where the story kind of made more sense and it was working a little bit better, but I still had a few sections that I needed to do more brainstorming with. So one of the things I decided I really needed was deeper characterization of my main character. I had to show deeper stuff in their personality, and I got to the point where I was doing a lot of writing. I think that was on Monday, yesterday, and I just hit a stride where I was brainstorming on my typewriter. I think it was the Royal Quiet Deluxe, but I was just typing in this double-spaced formatting, rough draft typing, you could call it, maybe a paragraph or two on a sheet, and then I would insert it behind the main draft with some kind of letter or number notation indicating where it goes in the previous sheet, like an insert into another paragraph or whatever. But I was just doing a series of these, and it really hit me. This one part of the story really hit really well, where the character really started coming alive. So it really helps to have a prolonged writing session where you can really get into your stride and really figure out what's the best methodology for you personally to write with. And what works for me a lot of times is to do the very first draft on a fountain pen on a kind of a legal pad, and then I redline edit as I go. And that works really well. I was doing some of that this morning to actually finish up the main part of the story, and that's worked really well. So I have this, what I'm calling revision 6, my own internal revision 6, and I have just the final part to finish, and that'll finish the story hopefully. So from this format, I'll probably have to reread again and again over a period of time, kind of let the story sit. When you're working with it continuously over a concentrated period of time, sometimes, at least for me, I can't read it fresh because the same sentences and phrases I've read so many times I kind of gloss over. I don't see the mistakes that might be present. So I really need to step back from it for a period of time and then go back to it and read it fresh to get any clearer ideas about changes or corrections or just tweaking of the wordsmithing of the project. But I'm getting closer to it, so I'm hopefully going to be able to send this. I'm going to when I get to the point where I think it's actually done, I'm going to type it into the word process template that Richard sent, and then I'll be able to email that to him. And then I don't want to commit to a final typewritten version until I know that all my grammar and sentence structure and all this other plot line issues are all resolved before I commit to that final write on the typewriter itself. But it's an interesting process for me. It's started with raw typing and some raw handwriting with fountain pen. It's progressed through hand-struck revisions, some typewritten revisions in between the double line spacing, and then retyping on the typewriter in a 1.5 or 2 line spaced machine, and then going through that and rereading, restudying the plot, thinking about it. Does it make sense? Does the storyline make sense? It's just a continuous process of revision. Yeah, so then another thing I did is, it was yesterday, I went up to the cigar store in the afternoon, and I brought my little Ogami notebook and a fountain pen, and I did some more mind mapping, or at least I did a bubble flow chart of more of the storyline of where the character's at, from where it starts to where she's at now, and then where the story has to go to finish. And it kind of revealed itself. The kind of plot line kind of revealed an interesting ending. And that was what I was working on this morning, working from this kind of flow chart, bubble chart, working on handwriting on fountain pen, the kind of rough draft of the ending, and then now typing that into this typewritten draft number 6. So it's been really interesting. And of course, every one of these revisions, I just, I made corrections on my handwritten draft of this ending. And then as I typed it in the typewriter, I made other revisions, because sometimes when you see it typed out in mechanical print, it looks different. I mean, something reveals itself about the sentence structure or the logic of it or whatever. It looks different, and you'll see something fresh, and you'll change it as you put it in on the typewriter, on the paper. And so once this final part of the story, the ending, is actually concluded, which should be today or tonight, then I'm going to sit down with this tomorrow, try to do a real good read of it, proofreading, have my wife proofread it, and maybe somebody else, and then make some final changes to it, and then I'll hopefully be able to mail it off. But it's really a lesson in the old adage that writing is mainly a process of rewriting. Getting those initial ideas down is one thing, but being able to fashion it and mold it. You're starting with like a lump of clay, and you have to mold that lump of clay, that story, into something that really starts to look like a real story. And then you have to finally craft the details so that it really is presentable. And that is the whole process of writing. That's the main art of it. The main work of it is the rewriting. And so you have to kind of enjoy that, the mechanics of the writing and the rewriting process. Even if you're like me and not that educated or skilled in writing, it's a fun process. I really enjoy it. And so I would encourage you guys, there's only a few days remaining till February 1st, when the first draft has to be entered into the cold hard type project. But I encourage you guys to get involved. If you already have a story idea and you've been procrastinating, drop everything and start writing, I would encourage you. And if you're already in the midst of your project, don't quit now. Make the final push toward finishing that and getting it submitted on time. And I look forward to seeing everybody's work published in the book when it does come out. I've been purposefully putting off having another typing assignment in our typing assignment series. Some of you have been wondering why. And well, the reason why is because many of us who participate in the typing assignments are also participating in the Cold Hard Type project. And I don't really want to let the typing assignment series interfere with your opportunity to get a story in the Cold Hard Type project. So next week, hopefully or so, I'll put out the next assignment for the typing assignment series, and I thank you everybody for participating in that and taking interest in that. Well, this is Joe Van Cleve, and it's kind of a cloudy, cold day out there, but I do want to get outside. I do need a haircut. My God, look at this. Okay, it's Tuesday. The barber shop is open. I'm going to go get a haircut. I'm going to start this edit. I got to work on this ending of the story. You guys stay creative, and until next time, have yourselves a great day.